Hi, my friends. Welcome to this episode of Healing Your Codependency. I'm Marshall Burtcher, and I'm excited to have you here today because we're going to jump into exploring why we fixate so much on other people's thoughts and feelings and perspectives of ourselves. Why are we chasing that? Now, a lot of us already know the surface answer to that is that we're seeking their approval, but there's something bigger and deeper going on that you need to understand in order to fully exit this habit and start embodying yourself in a way that feels safe and empowering, freeing for yourself. Because I'll tell you, the one thing y'all tell me over and over and over that you're seeking for, and this is what I sought for in myself as I've exited codependency, is the freedom to be myself. So I'm going to give you a key to that freedom today. So if you're new to me, I'm Marshall Burtcher, and I help codependents transform their prosperity, their relationships, and their purpose into something that is satisfying for them. So that's the whole point of the work, is to exit codependency, go through healing and growing ourselves so we know, love, and be who we are. So we're going to create the things that matter to us in prosperity, in our purpose, and in our relationships. So let's jump into this. So first of all, why do we fixate so much on other people's thoughts and feelings about us? This has to do with a factor called external orientation, meaning I am defining myself based on their points of view, their thoughts, their feelings, their opinions, their perspectives. They have power over us. We believe that they have power over us. Think that in for a minute. Because often we think, yeah, that has power. But it's actually the belief that has power that gives it the power. And this is an important thing to realize here. We are granting permission to them. We are granting authority to their thoughts and feelings, to their perspectives. We're doing that because we've been conditioned to think that other people's thoughts and feelings define us in some way. And we have sought our own definition through the approval of others, through the approval of mom, through the approval of dad, deity, some sort of authority in our world, teachers, whatever it might be. And we do that because we don't inherently trust our own definition. We don't trust what arises in us as expressions and impulses, insights, as complaints and limitations and boundaries and barriers. We have experienced shaming and guilt and put-downs and dismissiveness, even indifference when we've brought those things up. We've been shown by the way other people treat us and respond to us that these things should be treated with shame and guilt. They should be suppressed. They should be hidden. They should be changed. My childhood, I grew up in a highly conservative religious system that told me who I was and who I should be. And if I was outside the bounds of those parameters, then I was evil. Then I was bad. That is unworthy. And these kind of narcissistic relational systems do that. They attempt to define who you are. And in that, they convince you that they have the authority to do that. They have the authority to establish what you should and shouldn't be, what you should think and what you should feel and what you should want and not want. And ultimately, what you should prioritize and invest your time, energy, and life into. And no wonder we end up so frustrated, so empty, so disappointed in our world. This is why we end up choosing partners that are not compatible for us. This is why we choose careers out of a sense of survival or obligation rather than out of something that's satisfying, fulfilling, and inspired for us. This is why we have a loss of self. I don't know who I really am. I don't really trust myself. I don't like the way I am, and that conditioning is popping up there because nobody else was there to empower you, to help you learn how to orient towards yourself from a framework of like and love and approval. And that's ultimately what we are looking for. When we fixate on what other people's thoughts and feelings are about us, we are fixating on a permission of approval, meaning if they like what I do, they like what I think or like what I feel, I'm allowed to have that. I'm allowed to be that. It's safe enough for me to occupy that and have it. So in a lot of ways, this is permission seeking, permission to belong, permission to have worth, permission to be safe, to be ourselves in some way. Does this sound familiar? Let me know in the comments below what's coming up for you at this point, because I know it's a big deal. It's something that I've worked on and refined and exited from. I've been unblending from myself from this approval seeking over and over and over, because it was so ingrained. Felt like it was a part of me. Like that was the thing I was supposed to do. I was taught that I should seek permission to be, do, and have certain things in my world. Or in reality, I've learned that that is not the case. See, my friends, we are born sovereign individuals. We have what's called sovereign authority or self-authority. Now, self-authority, sovereign authority, is the power to define ourselves. It's the power to choose and act according to what we value and what makes sense for us in our world. It's the authority to define our relationships, our purpose, our prosperity, and to follow that. So we're the ones establishing the values and principles we follow. We're the ones that establish the limits and boundaries that direct us. We're the ones that accept into our world or deny and reject out of our world people, places, and things that work for us or don't work for us, whatever the alignment is there. We are ultimately the one that defines who we will be. See, self-authority shows up in our identity. It shows up in our worth. It shows up in our safety. It shows up in our relationships and our belonging. It shows up in our purpose, our desires, and our direction. It is the hub of true functionality in our life, whereas codependency has replaced that. I need to appeal to others in order to define myself and know I'm safe. Self-authority is like, I need to turn inward and understand what my values, my principles, my intuition, what am I sensing, what matters to me here, what is alive in me. I need to direct me from internal orientation rather than this external orientation. This is where we regain our power to define what matters to us and then pursue it. And that's the whole point of this work, is to take you out of that codependent paradigm, move you into the self-authority paradigm so that you can have the relationships that work for you, that are satisfying for you. They'll bring you a sense of peace or success or excitement into your world. It's the same with prosperity that works for you and purpose that works for you. And all of these are defined within us and emerge out of us. They're not established by external critique or external values or principles other people have. Those are theirs for their path, their world. Your work in knowing, loving, and being who you are is to understand that self-authority, and then the values, the principles, the priorities that emerge out of knowing yourself that way. My friends, the secret to your satisfaction, the secret to your peace that lasts, to the permanent state of freedom from codependency depends on your self-authority. So let's start right now with that. Let's jump in a little bit here. One of the practices of self-authority is giving ourselves permission to choose regardless of other people's perspectives or reactions. See, this is the act of choosing ourselves despite what another person does. And a way to help soften this up for ourselves, because I know nervous system wise we can really get activated on it, can be a pretty intense experience, is to practice a bit of indifference towards other people's thoughts and feelings about choices we are making for ourselves. And this active indifference is a practice of sovereignty. I do not need to consider their thoughts and feelings about a choice I'm making for my life. Now, there is some nuance to this. There are some caveats to this. If I'm making a choice in my life that will affect a direct relationship I have, I need to discuss it with them and inform them and have some conversation around that decision. Now, notice that it's not necessarily that I need to get their permission to make this decision. I need to inform them of the decision. Now, that also has nuance. Now, if I have agreements with someone that I'm now going to change, I need to discuss with them those changes. Self-authority is about directing ourselves despite what might happen, despite other people's approval or disappointment in what occurs. And when we are embodied in self-authority, authority, then we're no longer fixated on seeking other people's approval. We're no longer fixated on trying to understand what we need to be in order to be accepted. Instead, we are fixated on understanding who we are and what's going to, in the long term, leave us feeling more satisfied, more at peace, more still and content with ourselves. Because when we're out there fixated on other people, we are building resentment towards ourselves. We are building frustration towards ourselves, and we are building fundamental misalignment in our life. We are choosing relationships that won't work for us long term, businesses or jobs that won't work for us, hobbies we don't really enjoy. We are emptying ourselves, and we're only going to get back bitterness because we are not functioning from alignment with things, people, places, and things that resonate, that feed us, that nurture us. So if you're looking for a relationship that's satisfying, check in first. Am I coming from my self-authority about understanding what that means for me? Do I give my self-authority up when someone likes me, even though I'm not really that into them? They're like, yeah, maybe I'll go with that. No. If it's just okay or some of it's okay, these are abdications of self-authority. These are selling yourself out for something that's not working for you. See, self-authority, when practiced, starts to create alignment. And alignment means there are specific people, places, and things that work for you. And then there are going to be things that don't. And there are going to be more things that don't work for you than there are things that work for you, simply because of the work of quality, the work of alignment. And what's fascinating about this is there's a huge abundance of things that are available to you that are aligned. So there's a lot of available satisfaction, success, peace, and excitement available to you, but it depends on how we use our self-authority. How am I using my yes and no in my life, for instance? Am I saying yes to things I don't want, that I don't like, that I have to tolerate? Or am I saying no to them? Because when we say no to something, we keep the space available for the thing that we want. Because again, no two things can occupy the same space at the same time. So self-authority is going to be the practice of saying no to things that don't work and saying yes to things that do. And that has underneath of it, that is the self-authority of worthiness, the self-authority of self-containment. It's like, oh, I am worthy for the things I desire, so I'm going to say no to the things that don't work for me, yes to the things that I do. Self-containment, I am going to own myself. I'm going to be in accountability and responsibility to myself so that I end up satisfied in my desires. We're not giving ourselves away to other people's priorities or values. We're owning our own, and then we are facing what emerges. Self-authority is willing to deal with discomfort. It's willing to deal with conflict. It's willing to deal with people being disappointed. It is willing to deal with things ending. It's willing to deal with rejection because it respects and values the self-authority the other person has too. And it knows, it instinctively and deeply understands that if I'm coming from my self-authority and person A is coming from theirs, and we are meeting and it's working, that is a sustainable connection. But if I'm not coming from my self-authority, I'm not showing up in a honest and clear way in the relationship with person A. Person A is getting a different version of me, and I'm going to have to maintain that. That's going to burn me out. That's where people-pleasing burns us out. That's where we get resentment. That's where we get emptiness. Self-authority is about directing ourselves to stay within integrity to who we want to be. So I'm going to explore more of these areas of identity, purpose, belonging, and safety and self-authority in our next couple of episodes. But right now, I want you to explore this concept of indifference. Like, oh, part of my use of self-authority today is to practice allowing indifference to be okay. For me to be indifferent just a little bit about someone else's perspective of something I choose, something I want, or indifference about how I express myself. Like, I'm indifferent to how they receive it. I want to do this for me. And this can sound really like, wow, well, you're really selfish or self-absorbed. These are kind of judgments that tend to show up when people truly embody themselves and they're not concerned with the pleasing or the appealing to others. And we need to get into a relationship with that kind of discomfort if we're truly to lead our own lives and have the prosperity, the purpose, and the relationships that we desire in our world. Sometimes, in my experience, just peace of mind is the biggest gain I have by being in my own self-authority, because now I know at least I made a decision I can live with, that I'm proud of, and I'm not going to have to walk with resentment because of. That's a big deal. This is an enormous amount of self-respect towards ourselves when we do this. So my friends, first step in practicing some self-authority today is give yourself permission to be a little more indifferent about what other people think and feel about you, and see what you discover there. See what kind of entanglement you might have in other people's approval. Notice how that might affect your worth or your sense of safety or belonging. Also notice any kind of peace, any kind of relief that emerges in that. Because even just suggesting this tool in our video, in our time today, my body's like, oh yeah, I can let go of this fixation on other people's thoughts and feelings about this video. I can be a little more indifferent, which paradoxically for me makes me more available and curious about how it's impacting others, but I don't feel a sense of anxiety around my own worth or my own efficacy or anything like that. This is the power of self-authority. It makes us more available to receive what is, to understand it and respond to it, rather than resist it, avoid it, or try to control it because we fear that what emerges defines us in some way, or it's going to harm us in some way. And in Foundation, we start mastering our self-authority in 3 specific areas: emotional safety, belonging, and independent self-worth. That sets up the foundation, the bedrock for enduring self-authority, so you can start to know, love, and be who you are and go on to create the things that matter to you, because that's the self-authority journey there. And we start March 2nd, so 2 weeks from tomorrow, if you're watching this today on February 15th. But enrollment ends in 2 weeks, so check the link below or go to my website at healyourcodependency.com and come join us. And let's do this together in mastering your self-authority so that you have more capacity for that indifference, more capacity for your strength and your confidence, and you're able to follow your worth, your voice, and your principles so that you can thrive in your world. And that's what we set up again in Foundation. Self-authority and mastery and emotional regulation for emotional safety, social belonging, and then independent self-worth. So, my friends, thank you for being here today. Thank you for being a part of my world. Go out and play with this practice with indifference. Let's see what emerges for you. Share the comments below. Let me know what you gain from today's episode, what you discover with this practice of self-authority. And then remember, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and guys, share this episode out to people you know that can benefit from it. And I'll see you in our next episode. Okay. Bye-bye, guys. Hey, thank you for listening to today's episode. Are you looking for additional guidance on how to exit your codependency and create a life that's satisfying for you? If so, come join me in my email community. You can do that by going to join.freetheself.com or checking the description below and clicking the link there to join that community. You will receive more mentorship and guidance from me on how to navigate the 3 phases of thriving beyond codependency. Those phases being survival, healing, and creation, as well as opportunities to join my courses, workshops, and other trainings that I offer throughout the year. So come join us there, and I will see you in our email community. Bye-bye.